Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the All in Crypto podcast. Today, we've got a very special guest coming on once again. We have Smoke, who I'm sure you are all familiar with. Certainly, if you're into ISO cryptocurrencies, Smoke is somebody that I've had conversations with on air and off air, and they're always mind-blowing. And we want to bring one of those conversations to you today. So, Smoke, welcome on board. How are you?
I'm doing well. As always, appreciate the invite. Always humble for you sharing your platform with me and to be able to speak to your audience.
Yeah, the pleasure is all mine. And it really is an honor to share my platform with you and to explore that wealth of knowledge that you have in regards to this digital renaissance that is taking place. And talking about the topic of that renaissance, I want to start with a big question. I think there's a lot of people right now that perhaps aren't believers in what the cryptocurrency space is enabling. And when we say things like it's going to replace the current financial infrastructure and system, they perhaps don't quite grasp that. And what I want to do to kick things off is give this kind of big overview of how do you see crypto eventually replacing or transforming, in some cases, the current financial system and its infrastructure?
So I definitely think that's really important question to address first for anyone that's interested in the crypto space, and that's first understanding how exactly this transformation will take place. Many people can remember the years that existed before Apple Pay, and if you're from an older generation, you can remember the years before credit cards. So the current iteration of financial technology that we're about to undergo is the next evolutionary step of financial technology, and that is blockchain technology, crypto assets. And when it comes to the topic of replacing traditional infrastructure, I would say the more accurate way to describe this process would be more so a complementary addition to the system to make these traditional systems a hybrid system, which is a combination of traditional processes and blockchain based processes. And that's simply to, in the near term, extract the the value that blockchain can propose to financial institutions and consumers alike regarding saving money, efficiency, less fraud. And when we discuss complementing these systems, it's more in the nature of different fintechs, banks, different institutions have decided to work together when it comes to meeting the needs of consumers and clients that transact money cross borders, transact money domestically, and they want to avoid the common pain points because at the end of the day, fintechs that move money serve the same customers that are bank customers. So they over the last few years, it's been this collaborative effort to combine blockchain technology from um, new fintech, crypto blockchain based companies and traditional financial firms, and they're combining their systems and the best of their expertise together to come up with a financial combination to actually improve the user experience when it comes to moving value across the world.
I think that's a really important way to look at it. And I think we need to move away from this mindset. When I got into the cryptocurrency space, I was Bitcoin, 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 because I kind of believed in Satoshi's vision in the sense of introducing an alternative to the traditional financial system. And I believe that that narrative was hijacked. I think Bitcoin perhaps was a bit of a Trojan horse. Um, we're at this stage now where actually this technology, instead of combating the traditional financial system, whether that be through money or general services, is actually going to enable it to a greater degree. And I think moving away from that old mindset of this technology is here to replace, to this technology is here to work with and innovate in the same way that payments moved from cash to a digital form to now a crypto form, I think is extremely important. And what gives you confidence in regards to this change that is happening? Certainly we're going to talk about what's taking place and has taken place in the sort of near past. But what's giving you confidence right now that this change is happening? There's got to be so much, but just some sort of key things that you're looking at and going, yeah, this is absolutely happening. And you've been covering this stuff for years.
Yeah, it's exactly. Just to your point of covering it for years, that has given me the privilege to see how the financial institution's attitude towards blockchain has shifted, and I would say the most recent shift that has happened, I would say right before Trump won the White House, is that financial institutions are finally telling each other, like, at this moment, it's not the time to sit on the sidelines, that this transformation is happening. It is time to be fully invested, fully involved. And that was an attitude that wasn't previously expressed. It was more of a cautious, nervous attitude when it comes to the crypto market. When it was still riddled with fraud post FTX, there was a lot of uneasiness when it comes to interacting with these systems. However, the the bullishness of these institutional investors and these banks have accelerated since we have we now have a crypto friendly administration in the United States, where it is a financial incentive and a competitive one to adopt these technologies and to no longer have qualms or fears about using this technology and have a forward mindset. But when it comes to just specific language that I've been seeing that should, perk everyone's ears up and make them more aware of how serious this changes, is that I've seen many documentations that repeatedly use the word inevitable, as this is going to happen whether you want to accept it or not, that the world's financial infrastructure is being upgraded as a result of fundamental issues and challenges within the current global financial system. Though understanding that idea that things are going from analog and traditional finance to digital, to insecure to secure, from concentrated to distributed, understanding that that shift is very fundamental in understanding why this has to happen and how it's going to happen, because the digitization of monies, commodities, and assets is an inevitable thing when it comes to the world's financial infrastructure being digitally upgraded. The value and wealth creation that will come from this has been documented as something that will dwarf the wealth created by the internet, which we, as we understand, as people that are alive right now, is the last largest wealth creation event that we've witnessed, and now we're fortunate enough to see a second one.
Let's stop on that. Let's talk about the greatest transfer of wealth perhaps ever in human history, and what's meant by that and how you see that playing out. And we can link that to how us as individuals that are looking to take part in this can do exactly that. So let's cover the kind of greatest wealth transfer perhaps in history. It's very hard to say in history, certainly when you go right the way back, when money in the world looked very different. But let's talk about this wealth transfer that is taking place today. Let's get an overview of that.
Yeah, so I would say the great wealth transfer is certainly characterized by two things, I would say. And the first one is, there is a generation that is going to inherit a significant amount of family wealth after, in the next few years, and this modern generation of investor most likely will not pivot towards traditional investments and follow the footsteps of their parents and grandparents. They will most likely shift their trillions of dollars and save family wealth into new asset classes like cryptocurrencies, like AI. Those new industries, those new assets to invest into, will certainly cause a significant shift in rotation out of capital from modern investments um, to more up to date ones. And the other half to the great wealth transfer is certainly that this is the cryptocurrency market is the first asset class that has been created in over 150 years. So things that we can
Wow.
invest our money into, stocks, commodities, bonds, this is the first asset class to be created. And we were, like I said earlier, we were privileged to witness this creation. And, one of the inherent and fundamental use cases of cryptocurrency and blockchain technology is to move value, of course, and to inherit value, transact value, generate yield from value. And when you take a step back at the global stage, at the international stage, how much value exists in the world that is able to be tokenized on these public blockchains that are available for our access and to be acquired and purchased by us, we are talking about in the quadrillions of dollars. And for the average person that's not too good at numbers, we have millions, billions, trillions. and the digit after trillions is quadrillions. And of course, that is a number that very few people can conceptualize, including myself. But understanding that all of this value has to be tokenized inevitably because the entire world's infrastructure is being upgraded to digital, and all value has to be digital in order to for it to be useful in a digital financial system. That gives you a pretty accurate illustration on this massive scale of how much money is and how much value is set to be inherited by the crypto market and indirectly, of course, crypto asset holders.
Wow, I love it how you broke that down into sort of two parts. You've got this kind of demographic shift in regards to money. So we know that I think it's something like 70-80% of wealth within the US is held by people 65 and over. Um, these people would have been very used to investing in what they know. There's now something different that a lot of them are perhaps skeptical in regards to getting into, although we are seeing some of that with what's happening with the ETFs, and I think we'll see more of that. But as that generation moves on, there's going to be that natural transfer of wealth to people who perhaps are more familiar with the space that we're currently dabbling in. That's from a kind of a demographical investment point of view or money point of view. There's also actually what this technology is doing and the fact that this is a new asset class and we're seeing that enabled. I always think it's interesting. There's two sides to crypto I look at quite often. One is it as an asset class and being enabled as that, and one is it as a technology. They both go hand in hand. They're going to bring each other up. Um, but I find that fascinating how you managed to break that down into two sort of segments in regards to wealth transfer through an aging rich population and that trickling down, but also in regards to this as a new asset class. And how would you say normal people take part in that? Of course, neither me or you are financial advisors, and this is just our own opinion on things. But if you're a normal person, you're your average Joe, right now, we're saying this opportunity is here. How do you take part in that? Of course, there is a link to Smoke School in the description and his Twitters and things like that. That's a great place to start. But more broadly, how do we take part in this?
100%. So first and foremost, I would say just developing a strong mental model on exactly what you're buying into at this moment. Many people do purchase assets that they have no idea why they put their capital into it, and that causes the emotional swings of during volatility in this crypto market, which is one of the worst mistakes you can have is being emotional and not understanding the asset that you bought. And after you do that, the second step would well, I'll help you mentally represent what you're buying into, and everyone trusts the internet. They trust the search engine that they use, and they trust that there will be a secure way that they get to every website that they desire without the fear of being hacked, simply because of secure protocols that provide a secure environment for every website that is deployed on the internet that we all share. Now, blockchain is simply going to be a layer built on top of the internet that we already trust. So when it comes to trust and fear of this technology, you already trust the internet. The blockchain is just going to be a layer on something that you already trust that ensures more trust. But something else that demands more trust than search engines and acquiring information via keywords is value movement. Blockchain will be the first value movement layer on the internet. And by to participate in this upgrade of the internet of the financial system with blockchain, you acquire the assets that will be a part of this layer on top of the internet. And there's many public blockchains that provide scalable enterprise solutions for banks to move value across the world via the internet. And these are, of course, ISO assets that are available on your commonly available popular exchange, Coinbase, Uphold, or whatever your preferred crypto broker is. However, these crypto protocols are now being implemented to secure the value movement channels on the internet, similar to how previous information protocols secure the internet currently. However, those protocols cannot be monetized in a way that they are being monetized now via public blockchains and the tokens that will accrue value on them as they are used over time.
And it's, I think, a comparable. We mentioned the internet and the kind of wealth transfer that induced. If you bought internet stocks and you understood how the internet was going to fundamentally the dot-com kind of era, which went through its boom and bust and then ultimately took hold of the world. And I think, it's always evident with hindsight. But if you saw that transformation, that innovation that was being brought, you could have done very well off buying the stocks. We've got this unique sort of value proposition with cryptos where they have tokens that aren't stocks, but are perhaps linked to the usage and utility and success of these cryptocurrencies. And it's becoming very evident, for the same reason that we stopped sending letters and started sending emails, that these cryptos are on the cusp of adoption. One question everybody has, and we spoke about it briefly in the last one, but why would these financial institutions not just use their own private blockchains and sort of perhaps give retail that opportunity? That's not the right thing that I'm trying to say there. But why public blockchains over private blockchains? And maybe there's some comparables to the current internet that we have today.
So this is directly from what institutions think from how they have been interacting with these networks over time. First and foremost, public blockchains, and examples are XRPL, Hedera, XLM, IOTA, Quant. These are public general purpose use blockchains. These are enterprise grade ready blockchains as well, which means that they can handle the business throughput that the biggest businesses in the world and their transaction volume, they can keep up with them and scale to the level that they need to on an international level. These public layer one blockchains have also been tested extensively to have been battle tested over years through their staying power in the market. So they have a strong track record of being a secure open network that apps can be built on by these financial institutions. However, private networks, although they guarantee transparency, aren't as scalable, aren't as general purpose use cases like the XRPL, like Hedera Hashgraph. These are general purpose technologies that um, can actually meet the requirement that these financial institutions need, as opposed to the not as scalable, not as scalable environment that private networks provide, which are very good for experimentations and proof of concepts. However, when it comes to real commercial use with real customers and live money, having a public network that anyone can build on that is ready to scale internationally and keep up with the transactions per second. Sorry about that. For um, traditional systems, that is very important for a as a characteristic for a technology to implement on a global scale.
And I think there was some comparables here with the internet. I know the internet at one point they were trying to essentially make it private, control it. I mean, the internet came out of a kind of military experiment. It's very interesting that the founder of the sort of Ethernet is actually working on crypto projects right now. That's certainly interesting. But there was a route with the internet to actually make it kind of private, and they just figured out that this is not going to work on a global scale. And I think maybe there's some comparables there with, if you want to enable this kind of global system, it somewhat has to be global in nature. And I think the public side of or the public blockchains really bring that and do that far better. And I do think we are moving towards this internet of value, this global sort of interactive, immersive system. And crypto's at the heart of it. And it goes back to what you said in regards to this kind of wealth transfer that we're in the kind of midst of. What things are you looking at right now? So there's got to be sort of key things that you see coming out. A lot of them you've known about for a long time, but they're now coming out in the media. They're now coming out to the mainstream. I know you've documented a lot of this prior, sometimes years prior, and now it's all coming to fruition because these people have a far broader roadmap or runway than most sort of retail think. But what things are you seeing right now where you're going, wow, we're on the cusp of this? And are we on the cusp of this, as a more general question? Where are we in regards to this stuff happening? Are we here? Is it years away? I mean, it's very hard to sort of answer that, but what would your take on that be?
I would say it's a very accurate statement to say that we are on the cusp of mainstream adoption of crypto assets. This is actually a topic that I briefly that we dived deeply into our in the smoke room community recently, where some of the things that retail investors are completely unaware of that which should shape their perspective and shape their bullishness for this cycle and the upcoming months and years regarding crypto adoption and the outlook of crypto. I would boil those aspects into two things. The first thing that I've noticed that is completely undeniable that is should eliminate all bearishness is that with our new crypto friendly Trump administration, he and his delegates are systemically removing all of the legal barriers that have prevented all of the utility and price action that should have happened years ago. And seeing that happen up close, and this is not something that I was even aware of when I first got into crypto, but it's become more prevalent as in recent years, is that there has been specific letters and guidelines and guidances that have explicitly prevented banks and the biggest commercial banks in the world from interacting with these altcoins and their platforms, which would have, inevitably exponentially boosted their value years ago if these systems were rolled out years ago. However, this entire process was stalled from a not so crypto friendly administration previously, and that stalling of that is that was a huge barrier. We're saying like 6+ years in the case of something like XRP, and even the entire market where they were not able to fully reach their full potential because of simple legal guidances, and institutions have explicitly said that regulatory clarity is the number one catalyst for their operations and their business. So the fact that I'm seeing every letter, every guidance, every federal institution roll back these anti-crypto policies, that is one of the final straws to actually allow crypto technology to thrive in the number one economy in the world, and therefore, subsequently thrive in the rest of the world. And there has been even an acceleration in the um, harmonization of international regulations regarding crypto assets from other countries, simply because of Trump's enthusiasm regarding crypto adoption, making the United States the number one crypto hub in the world. So that in itself, that that this is on the way regarding regulatory clarity, that the only thing that has stopped banks from interacting with crypto assets is soon to be a thing of the past, is something that should be on the forefront of everyone's minds through all the volatility, and should keep you calm and focused. And the second thing I would say, just from someone that has been observing this space for a while, is that for the first time in my crypto career, is that we're seeing many announcements and many plans and intentions of launching live blockchain based products for mainstream use. And that's something that the average person isn't aware of. That's something even the average crypto investor is not aware of, that will benefit their crypto holdings. But you have to, of course, be well read, well educated on every single project that you're involved in, as well as which regulators, which financial institutions, which banks are deploying certain products that are related to to the coin that you're invested into. So seeing for the first time documents say a live product coming to the market in 2025, live public blockchain based product using an asset that is talked about regularly online, that is should be eye opening for everyone. That fact that we have a really strong crypto friendly government, that and a president that's extremely serious about um, removing the barriers that prevented crypto from thriving. And now that we are actually bringing products to the market, and they're no longer just experimentations and no longer happening on private networks, we're actually going to see a lot of things that have been theorized regarding utility and price action happen in the very near term.
It's kind of surreal, really, when certainly if you've been in this space for any kind of length of time. Um, it's surreal to see the things that are happening right now, certainly within the US, but everyone's paying attention to the US. It's happening more broadly. I mean, Christine Lagarde came out. She's came out on a number of occasions now, but just last week and said, look, October's our CBDC deadline, and we're moving forwards from then. And we're going to make that decision and actual look to implement things from then onwards. You're talking MiCA regulations. You're talking Euroclear and what they're doing. You're talking the SWIFT system itself looking to harness this technology. I mean, it doesn't matter where you look. It seems like we're at this kind of inflection point when it comes to the cryptocurrency space. On the back end of what you mentioned, regulatory approval, which has held this industry back, it seems like we're at this inflection point right now, and that, I hate to use this term, switch is being flipped, and we're ultimately going to see governments around the world embrace this technology, which is huge on its own. But more broadly than that, businesses, commerce, institutions, anybody that's everybody is going to have to start getting on board with this technology, because it's kind of like ignoring the internet. It's unignorable at this stage. I mean, we spoke about DTCC a little bit and what they presented yesterday. Are there certain things, like certain key players or certain governments or certain things that have been said that have kind of really pricked your ears up? So the comptroller of currency came out, I think 2 days ago, said some pretty insane things about digital assets and enabling them. Obviously, Scott Bessent, we know what David Sachs has said. We know what Paul Atkins said in his recent speech. Are there any things that you're looking at and going, wow, I can't believe that was just said? I mean, you probably believe it because you've been looking into it for so long, but is there anything in the recent sort of past few weeks or months where you've gone, we're just getting so much confirmation here?
Yeah, honestly, yes, every day. I honestly
Yeah.
do. There's many things that I read and see that even when after I post them, I can't believe I post certain things. I can't believe that this is true or that this is reality now. But I would say just on at the forefront of my mind, something that I'm participating in that I can't believe I'm a part of is that going to these SEC crypto roundtables. I've actually attended all of them so far, and I plan on going to the next one on Friday. So that's tomorrow, but that's where Paul Atkins is going to be at. So definitely will be able to get a further insight from the federal government on how they view crypto adoption and crypto regulations and their attitudes on the same topics that retail investors discuss every day. But the fact that those are happening in a transparent way, in a public way, in a way that can allow anyone to actually speak to the people that are drafting these regulations, that is very monumental to me. And that's something that would have not happened in any other administration. And that also even reminds me on how serious this administration is and how fast things are moving. And the administration has put out their timeline. They have put out the deadlines that they have regarding regulatory clarity and actually signing this legislation into law, and that's coming as soon as this summer, and most likely will be finalized 100% by the middle of autumn. So these are times timelines that are around the corner that are very near term deadlines. If you've been in this space for years, months should be nothing to you. But even for someone that has just recently entered this market, you should be fortunate to realize that you don't have much time to wait to experience the utility of these assets, to experience the actual utility driven price action and not so much speculative price action, even which even reveals the the dark side of getting into this space a little late, is that you don't have much time to prepare. You don't have much time to position yourself before this actually takes off and actually has a real world impact on this space. And it won't be coming down like many others, like many people are expecting this space, simply because that would be too easy. It would be too easy for 4 cycles to turn out in the same way. And then the fifth cycle, everyone can position themselves by doing the same thing. That is one of the biggest mistakes that 99% of retail investors will make in this space, is not knowing how rules have changed in this space. And that is another topic that we discussed heavily in the smoke room, is how many investors are not aware of changing rules. One common thing that if you talk to a regular crypto vet in this cycle that has been through multiple cycles, is that they are promising themselves to take profits this cycle because they didn't last cycle, the cycle
It's
beforehand.
just stupid, right? To me, it's
Yeah,
just
but
stupid
that's just
saying,
it. Yeah, it's just to bring back the same the same methods that you wish you did for a new cycle with new rules. It's just you're just going to be waiting for prices that waiting in the bear market for prices that will most likely will never come.
so it does again seem like we're really at this inflection point, perhaps from a price point of view as well. And I think so. So really, what we're talking about there is crypto has followed the Bitcoin 4 year cycle, which actually centers largely around debt refinancing. And I think Satoshi, whoever he, she, they, or whatever 3-letter agency was behind that, I think they understood that very well, because he was obviously a very smart, or they were very smart individuals. So what we're talking about is a moving away from that 4-year cycle. So a lot of people are looking at things. I always get this question: when shall I sell? And one common answer that people give is, "Oh well, just sell when historically the time for the bull market's been up, and then we go into a bear market until the next halving, and we start to, And I kind of think that's naive, because that works until it doesn't. And if you look at what's driven crypto today, what's going to drive it moving forward is going to be vastly different. And this is the usage and utility that we're talking about, and the acknowledgement of that, and the actual transferring of wealth that's going to come on the back end of that. So do you envision that we are no longer going to follow, and you can't say this with 100% certainty, but you can certainly say, I don't, opinion wise, I don't think we're going to continue to follow the 4-year cycle. Do you think we're now moving away from a 4-year cycle driven cryptocurrency market to a usage and utility one, and that the 4-year cycle may be a thing of the past, perhaps barring Bitcoin?
I will say with 100% certainty that we're moving away from the 4-year cycle. There's
I love
many
that.
data points. There's many pieces of evidence that shows, even if you look at the performance of this cycle, it's performing very uniquely compared to previous cycles, and that is uh, primarily due to the participation of institutional investors, sovereign wealth funds. Previous cycles were driven 100% by speculation. Retail investors, even if you can call them a few, thousands of millionaires retail investors. They aren't financial institutions. They don't run, the biggest regulatory bodies in the world. And now the biggest regulatory bodies in the world are finally entering the crypto market, finally regulating this market, and the largest players in this market that have never touched this market are touching it for the first time, and that will cause just a disproportionate effect that will certainly, I would say, discombobulate is the most appropriate word I can think of to the average retail investor's mind when it comes to what will happen, how it will play out, all of the expectations and the outcome that retail investors are imagining most likely will not come true. That goes back to our off-camera conversation of very few things turn out the way that you imagine them to be, and the crypto market is no different. And the fact that there are new rules to follow, new strategies to win, successful strategies documented by institutions to make sure that they don't lose, to follow, that are public, that people like me are following. Those are all of the things that the average retail investor is missing when they say, I'm going to just sell at my own original price points, not based on anything logical, because I didn't take profits last cycle.
I think this is a really important conversation, because I think most people are still conditioned, as we all are as human beings. We're an input machine that essentially gives an output based on the 5 senses that we have, and how we interpret things. But we've got to think about sort of where we are and what's coming, and what may have been, may not be. And when you talk about institutions positioning in the cryptocurrency space, okay, we're talking again. There's the duality here with crypto. There's the asset side of it, more an investment side of things, and there's the technological side of things. We know that technologically, this is a real technology that's going to transform the current world that we live in. And I think people are going to be using crypto, as do you, in the same way that people use the internet or any of the other technologies that have came prior, perhaps in a more intimate manner, certainly when crypto meets AI and these sort of things. How are you seeing positioning from a investment point of view, if you are, from institutions? Now, one thing I watched before we dive into that is CoinShares weekly report. And one thing I found very interesting, certainly with the past couple of weeks, is despite general outflows with the overall cryptocurrency market, one asset sticks out in particular, and that's XRP. And actually, the last report that came out this Tuesday showed a pretty insane jump in regards to XRP purchasing through ETPs. Most retail participants don't use ETPs. So I always use that as a barometer to look at what institutions are doing, or more of an institutional elk. What are some of the things you're seeing that give you that confidence towards institutions positioning, not from a technological side of things, more perhaps an investment side of things, if there are?
And there's many, and I would say the number one indicator that institutions are accumulating the same altcoins like XRP, XLM, HBAR is that they're surveyed. They're simply X. They say what assets
Yeah.
specifically that they're most bullish on and that they're invested into. And I actually posted before, there's a recent documentation from Ernest and Young, Pantheon, and Coinbase that was
Yes.
released that said I would say almost 80% of institutional investors are exposed to um, altcoins outside of Bitcoin and ETH, primarily XRP and Solana. So
Yep.
that was a recent confirmation of that. But the CoinTrader report that you mentioned, I'm familiar with that as well. But I think in another document I've seen that the reason for the inflows into XRP compared to other cryptocurrencies during this recent downturn was most recently as a result of the Hidden Road acquisition, which has been touted as a once in a lifetime deal, simply because it makes Ripple the first crypto native firm to operate and own a global prime broker, which is like a really big deal and is set to become finalized in the coming months. This is when we're discussing where we're talking about a global prime broker that moves $2 trillion a year or $2 to $3 trillion a year. The deal will allow Hidden Road to exponentially expand using Ripple's balance sheet. So the deal will definitely not unlock significant growth regarding traditional systems and blockchain systems. But most importantly, it will supercharge XRP's utility by allowing XRP to seamlessly and efficiently move the value that Hidden Road has already been transacting on a day-to-day basis, but now using it in a full scale institutional manner with XRP for the first time. And no other cryptocurrency has this unique positioning at this time. And something I just posted recently is that this is XRP's opportunity to actually become a part of the plumbing of the financial system. And when I hear a metaphor like that, I just think really, really deeply embedded. And that's what you should think of plumbing. And now you can think of that of with XRP of how deeply embedded and how many layers XRP will be embedded into the financial system, which should just let you know how I would say inherently significant it will become to just propping up the financial system in many ways as we become more accustomed to feeless and efficient value transfer.
I think the Hidden Road acquisition is extremely unique and interesting, and I want to explore that a little bit more before we dive into some of the other cryptocurrencies out there. Um, so this is very interesting for a number of reasons. So we know Ripple as a company are partnered with many central banks around the world, many companies and institutions around the world, certainly in regards to their field. And the Hidden Road acquisition, I think maybe we should explore this a little bit more in the sense of what this actually means and what is actually happening. So Hidden Road, I can't remember if it was $3 or $2 trillion that they do. I think that's annually, by the way. I don't think it's sort of quarterly or anything like that. I believe it's annually anyway. Um, Maybe talk us through that and what's involved with that acquisition, and to kind of emphasize why that's such a big deal, and then maybe we can link that to XRP's price if there is any linkage to it. Because a lot of people say, okay, well, XRP is going to actually be used and utilized in this situation, which means it's going to have billions of dollars daily potentially in volume. Maybe we can explore that after we've tackled the first part, which is why is this such a big deal for Ripple and XRP, this sort of Hidden Road acquisition?
Well, first and foremost, one important data point that has been consuming my recent research is that venture capitalist investment funds. Are you familiar with those that concept, those trends?
Yeah, yeah.
Just where investors are moving their money. Um, Q1 2025 venture data report indicated that projects focus on pragmatic utility and institutional appeal using blockchain has significantly increased just this quarter. So that data point is a reality at the same time that this hidden row acquisition happened, and that's directly as a result of the improving regulatory environment. But when we just look at what hidden road is, it's a well established prime brokerage firm that they're responsible for clearing and trading services across foreign exchanges, fixed income, um, commodities. So a really big player in the financial ecosystem. And now that Ripple is set to own them, Ripple can actually integrate and expedite the trade and settlement services of a $3 trillion prime brokerage service, which will migrate all of the post trade and clearing settlement to the XRP XRP ledger directly, and the XRP ledger is designed for enterprise high high enterprise grade use cases and high scalability to keep up with the transactions per second that hit and roll may need on a daily basis. And the fact that Ripple understands that the XRP ledger is ready for this use, it just truly shows how far we are in this transformation, that it's not skepticism on either Ripple side or hit and roll side to actually make this move.
And a lot of people on the back end of this are sort of speculating in regards to what this might mean for XRP's price. It could be just, it's one of those questions that I've seen a lot of. Do you have any thoughts on that? Totally fine if not, but a lot of people are basically speculating, okay, with this added usage and utility, they're essentially looking at XRP as the kind of bridge asset and the volume that's going to be flowing through it and the effects that that might have on price. Do you think there's going to be any kind of impact? It's quite hard to say, really, isn't it, with everything going on? But do you think there's going to be any impact on XRP's price on the back end of this acquisition? Could you see a positive impact?
I would say the mental model that retail investors should have when they're just looking at events regarding its relation to crypto and its performance is that again, very few things are black and white, here or there, yes or no. When it comes to singular events impacting the entire market and impacting or being solely 100% responsible for a crypto's price performance, I don't agree with that. You know, this market, you have to be able to simultaneously represent multiple events happening at the same time, because that's truly what's happening. It would be lovely if we could just ignore everything else and just focus on the hit and roll acquisition and then just put all our time, effort, and energy to analyzing this acquisition and ignore everything else. But that's not the reality. There's many moving parts, many factors happening at the same time that I take into consideration when it comes to what I anticipate next for this market. And regarding the hit and roll acquisition being complete in the coming months, there are several just as important, if not more important, events that will simultaneously catalyze the adoption of XRP into traditional financial systems. So to say this will have such a large impact is completely ignoring all the other things that will have um, a direct and likely more influential impact on the price of XRP as compared to one partnership. And just some examples is the stablecoin legislation being finally signed into law will have a significant influence on the usage of RUSD, which has a direct impact on XRP usage. On top of that, banks openly announcing that they use RUSD as a stablecoin. DeFi protocols using RUSD as a collateral stablecoin. Even Aave announcing that
Yeah.
RUSD is now available on over 10 blockchains to be used for passive income and DeFi use cases. All of those events are happening simultaneously on top of this hidden road acquisition. So that is my direct commentary to retail investors that want to understand how to look at the market and not just trying to predict, is it going to be yes or no, left or right, up or down.
Yeah.
Recognize, develop awareness, and of course, as always, study what's happening around you as opposed to isolating each event and determining what is the consequence of each isolated event.
Take a step back and look at it as a whole. Yeah, no, I absolutely love that approach. And do you think, I want to get onto some more cryptocurrencies. Do you think about price when it comes to XRP? You know, you look into this stuff a lot. I would say 98% of people that are in the cryptocurrency market, potentially 99% of them, really only care about the price of this stuff. And we've also acknowledged that there's a great wealth transfer and opportunity here. Do you think about XRP's price? You know, you're an investor in the cryptocurrency market. We're not investing for, um, to lose money at the end of the day, and there's no guarantees with any of this stuff. But how do you think about XRP's price? That's a broad question that I know a lot of people will be very interested in.
100%. And at one point in time, I used to be a retail investor that had similar mindsets like many people who may be viewing this video. I have since graduated from that mindset into a more organized and sophisticated mindset, and that's the mindset that I promote to others, and that's keeping a more um, document based approach when it comes to how I imagine the future, how I anticipate what's next, how I invest my capital, and most importantly, how I view just the long term performance of all of these assets. Now, when it comes to focusing on price, I literally don't know what happens in the market price wise unless I see social media's emotional responses to things. That's just how not often I check prices, and that's simply because that's something I've done for a very long time, and it got very old to me and wasn't productive in any way. When it comes to how I just rationalize the exponential growth of all these assets, it goes back to the topic that I mentioned earlier when it comes to the second half of the Great Wealth Transfer. The Great Wealth Transfer will be facilitated from the value from the traditional realm migrating to the digital realm simply because there will be more capabilities with a digital representation of a physical asset compared to the physical version of it. I think an example you could think of it is a physical piece of paper versus a PDF. Why do we prefer PDFs over a physical piece of paper? Because you can sign it, color it, do many different edits compared to a physical piece of paper. And that is something that will be realized over time when it comes to digital assets versus physical assets, is that there will be you have more capacities to generate yield, to move the value, to pass on the value, to simply store the value in a more efficient way, and understanding that is an inevitable reality, and the fact that there's quadrillions of dollars set to migrate from the physical realm to the digital realm, mainly because of that reason, that there will be a strong financial incentive to tokenize all value and put them on public blockchains like the XRPL. At a certain point, you you start to think about how much money do you need as an individual. That's how much money that we are discussing in this space, and many people just mention astronomical price points, I guess, to rationalize not accumulating as much when they had the opportunity to. However, in the long term, the the future of these assets, the future of XRP specifically, will be driven by its efficiency and its adoption in the financial ecosystem, and partnerships like Hidden Road are early indicators that XRP, Ripple are chosen as some of the first platforms to deploy these um these large capital inflows. So understanding that XRP is positioned to receive, I guess, a fraction of these quadrillions of dollars, and despite what anyone views about value and market cap, that this value transfer will happen. That's enough for me to navigate this market with confidence and precision, to not necessarily be distracted by the volatility.
Yeah, and I was going to say sleep a hell of a lot easier at night. I always steer people well away from being too focused on short-term price action, day-to-day price action. Markets are volatile, certainly the cryptocurrency space. I think having that fundamental understanding of what's going on here is just so valuable. It's why we like talking to people like yourself. We've spoken about XRP. We've spoken about sort of broadly what's going on here, and we touched on this in our last sort of chat, but I want to revisit it a little bit. Um, you, as somebody that's got this wealth of knowledge, that's been in this space for a long time, probably gone through a similar sort of journey to myself, investing in something, and then at this stage, with all the knowledge that you've got, looking more heavily at other things. What are those things that you're looking more heavily in regards to cryptocurrencies? So XRP, of course, we spoke about. That's a big one. What other cryptocurrencies are you looking at right now in regards to enabling all of this? And you think other people should be also?
So the category of crypto assets that I'm extremely bullish on is the ISO compliant cryptocurrencies,
Why
and these
is that?
are yeah, that's something that I extensively show on X and in many documentations that I've seen over the years. But first and foremost, for anyone listening to just understand what the ISO standard is in very basic terms, is simply an international standard for financial transactions between banks. And that's basically just a set of rules and regulations that anyone who wants to transact money, they will have to follow that in the future, in the near future. Actually, this standard is finally being opened for the first time in its history. It's being open to cryptocurrencies to allow them to be used in these financial flows on a 24/7 basis. So we're talking trillions of dollars a day between all of the biggest banks in the world. And for the first time, that cryptocurrency will be included in these flows, and the eight that have been chosen as the eight compliant crypto assets are XRP, XLM, XDC, HBAR, Algorand, IOTA, and Quant. Did I miss?
Yeah.
I don't think I missed one.
There's what we got. Yeah. So we've missed one. So XRP, XLM,
XDC,
HBAR, XDC,
Algorand,
Algorand. Yeah, that was the one we missed.
yeah,
So Algorand was the one that we missed. Yeah.
IOTA, and Quant. So
IOTA
those
and
are
Quant.
the eight ISO compliant technologies that I'm the most bullish on. They all have reviewed and regulated enterprise grade technology ready for the blockchain shift. Being ISO compliant assets means that their internal systems were reviewed and confirmed to work and confirmed to produce economic output from the software that they create. So this isn't necessarily an opinion that I came to. The data, in fact, support that these eight blockchains will receive an uneven market share of economic growth simply because they're properly vetted and reviewed by the most robust regulators in the world. And being positioned in these assets simply mean that you want to make the most profits possible in the long term, and that you aren't distracted by any small term small projects, because in the internet boom there were many companies that threw .com on the end of their name to to make money and attract investors. However, 99% of those companies did not remain, and we only have FANG stocks and Tesla, and just a handful of companies that made it to $1 trillion status from that time period. But now we have an entirely new set of companies that are set to replace the most valuable companies in the world, and the data and the facts are pointing to that ISO compliant assets will be the companies that produce these assets, that govern these assets, will be the new most valuable companies in the world, simply because they are focused on a more, I would say, profitable um, part of business, and that's value transfer compared to e-commerce or entertainment or media, like some of these major internet companies are known for. Companies like Ripple, Stellar, XLM, Ripple, Stellar, XEC, for example, focus solely on moving value in an efficient way. And even outside of moving value, we have coins like IOTA and HBAR that are directly have direct ties to the exponential growth of artificial intelligence. Now, for people who feel as though they're missing out on AI investments and may look to cryptos with AI in its name just to take advantage of this artificial intelligence shift, ISO compliant cryptocurrencies like HBAR and IOTA will directly benefit from the growth of artificial intelligence. And that the evidence exists for that, as well as HBAR has partnerships with NVIDIA. IOTA has partnerships with robotics companies, and that is certainly going to have a significant impact on the price of these tokens in the long term. So when it comes to which assets will perform the best over the long term, ISO compliant assets, regulated assets, assets that have been proven and have a track record of very little downtime, high efficiency, high scalability, those would be the first platforms chosen to deploy trillions of dollars of capital for the first time um, in cryptocurrency history.
It makes all the sense in the world, right? It makes all the sense in the world that those coins having that regulation. It's kind of a coincidence that you've got these ISO coins, or it's not a coincidence, and then you've got the likes of Swift moving towards ISO standards. But it's not just Swift; it's more broadly. And out of those ISO coins, I know we mentioned them previously, but one that I'd love to talk to you about that I think is probably the least known in regards to those ISOs is, depending on who you ask, of course, IOTA. What's the deal with IOTA? What's going on there? You mentioned IOTA now. I see you posting about it on X a hell of a lot. And remember, there's a link to Smoke's channel in the description. What's the deal with IOTA? Why should people be interested in IOTA? We know it's an ISO coin. We know it's going to benefit from the exponential age of AI, just like Hedera is. Of course, they've got a partnership with NVIDIA, Intel, and Equity Labs. What's going on with IOTA? Let's break that down, because a lot of people are listening to this and they're going, IOTA? It's not on everyone's minds, but it probably should be.
I definitely think it should be. It's something that's even been documented as a coin on the forefront on the minds of institutional investors as DAG, acrylic based protocols, which is the consensus protocol that IOTA uses,
Yep.
um, are being highlighted as a secure blockchain based system that is worthy of investment in 2025. That's one reason. There's also other um, very important partnerships that IOTA has. One that I'm thinking off the top of my mind is the World Economic Forum. IOTA is currently partnered with the World Economic Forum to develop digital identity solutions. Something that's partnered with the World Economic Forum most likely has a longer path of adoption than many may not be aware of being partnered with the financial elite, the largest institutions in the world, the most influential institutions in the world. Definitely position IOTA for significant adoption. But most importantly, what people should associate, one of the main associations that people should have with IOTA is robotics, which is tied into AI as well. So in the future, when robotics ultimately become a reality, we will have robots making transactions with other robots, and
Yep.
machine to machine transactions need to take place. IOTA is specializes in machine to machine transactions. So in a world where robotics are everywhere, facilitating efficiency in the world, and you would like to take advantage of that, IOTA is the perfect investment for you, simply because it's something that is directly tied into this this trend of robotics and ultimately machine to machine transactions, and performing efficient, low value micro payments between um, these machines is certainly going to be an industry that will grow very rapidly, and that's not something you're going to want to be on the sidelines for.
I absolutely agree, and I think it's when you look at, one thing that we've seen with the tariffs is America talking about onshoring manufacturing, and there's been all these memes, and I linked this to IOTA. I said, "Oh, this is interesting. This is kind of like what IOTA are trying to do." But there's been all these memes. If you've seen it, like the kind of style factories that maybe you have in China making like Nike footwear or something like that. And there's been in America, and they've obviously AI generated doing the same thing. There's been lots of memes about it, and I always say to people, do you really think if America is going to build factories within the United States, if they can do so, this is a whole different thing, but let's just say that's what's going to happen, that they're going to mimic Chinese style factories, or are they going to implement smart factories, which the likes of Amazon and many of these projects have been working on for years? That directly involves IoT, and potentially could involve something like, if you think about the future of manufacturing, the future of everything, it is IoT essentially. I really do truly believe that, because it just makes sense to do so. What's the point in all this innovation? Why did we stop plowing the fields by hand and start using machinery? Same thing's going to happen, and I think the IoT sort of revolution is a promising one. It's ahead of us, and we've got a cryptocurrency in IOTA, and there's others out there that is kind of miles ahead in regards to all of that. So if IOTA is not on your radar, guys, time to start checking it out. Go and, of course, follow Smoke. He drops some great information on it all, and of course, do your own due diligence and everything. Smoke, let's talk about a Nostradamus kind of prediction. Um, it can be that Bitcoin's not going to be the number one crypto in the next couple of years. It can be, and that might be an interesting one. It can be one that we've already touched on in regards to us not following the 4-year cycle anymore. It can be the mass scale adoption, which we've spoken about, that's coming, and governments around the world using this technology. Maybe give us your Nostradamus prediction in regards to the next 5 years or so, or the next couple of years in regards to this industry.
I would say beyond all of those topics, of course, those are questions that I've asked and answered and uh, developed worldviews on. However, I would say in most recent times, one thing that has added to my knowledge and perspective and just how I view this space is certainly the convergence of AI and crypto, and that's truly don't think that it's spoken about it enough when it comes to how essential they are for each other and how much they complement each other. And when it comes to why should retail care about the convergence of AI and crypto, of course, you have to have some sort of conceptualization of how fast AI is adopting now, how much value is set to be economically generated from AI, which is completely different than tokenization, where tokenization is inheriting a lot of value. AI is creating a lot of value. AI in combination with crypto will have no exaggeration, I believe, a just acceleration effect that will be too fast to catch. When we discuss things that will cause significant price action, accelerated price action, fast moving parts, very few things will impact um, the crypto market compared to the facilitation of artificial intelligence with transactions with financial institutions and the interaction of AI consumers and blockchain. That double flywheel effect that I've seen documented will certainly be a that will be a point in time where our fundamental understanding of value changes. And that is even a more reason to be positioned at this point in time, because when the concept of value, the concept of money changes, when things are valued at astronomical prices that we've never thought possible, that's not a circumstance you want to be in with little value. We're all going, every human is going to be put face to face with the philosophical concept of what is money, what is value, why am I here? And that is going to be introduced from AI, robotics, crypto projects that are valued in the hundreds of trillions of dollars on their protocol. And AI in combination with crypto will certainly achieve those $100 trillion valuations in single digit years. And seeing those projections, seeing that data being outlined by the most influential financial institutions in the world, that caught my attention and allowed me to develop a more accurate perspective on what I should expect coming into this market.
So really what we're talking about there is the kind of economic singularity that is coming, and you want to get ready for it, because right now we are blessed in a sense, and it might not seem like that, and there's a lot of complaining about it, certainly in regards to like house prices and things like that. You can change your own life and your financial future and your family and friends if you choose to do so. I think, and what we're kind of touching on here is this economic singularity where the boards have been or the chips have been thrown off the board, in the sense that you are now almost a serf, like what Frederick Hayek and some of these others warned about. And you are at the behest of the people that took those advantages, and there's going to be this great wealth divide that's coming. And if you don't take advantage of that with this economic singularity that's upon us, and the building of that, even though in some regards maybe you're investing in a bit of your demise or humanity's demise, you really need to start arbitraging and taking advantage. And I love that. And I love that the kind of tilt into AI. As always, Smoke, it has been an absolute pleasure. We'll have to get you on again. I'm sure this is the second time you've appeared, and each time there's been nothing short of alpha. We're going to leave links to where you can find Smoke on X, where you can join the Smoke School if you want to unlock his research and everything else. Smoke, do you have any closing statements?
Yeah, exactly. What you said. If you're interested in diving more into this content, the Smoke Room community is, I would say, the best information resource to actually come up with a profitable strategy in this market, to navigate this market with confidence and precision, to not be caught up in retail narratives and ultimately lose money. No one wants to lose money in crypto. However, that will be the fate of 99% of retail investors who aren't aware of, the same information that I am, that the Smoke Room community members are. And they're generously shared information and 24/7 access to me to answer all of your questions and concerns about the crypto market. And we can navigate this together and in a academic way by following the moves of smart money.
Smoke, it's been an absolute pleasure as always, my friend. We look forward to having you back on. That's it from us, guys. We'll see you all on the flip side.